We know that when we celebrate a birthday, we celebrate the anniversary of the day on which someone was born. And yet, when we celebrate a saint's feast day, it's typically not the day they were born, but the day they were born into eternal life, the day they died. Newman died in August. And yet this day, the 9th of October, is an important one in the life of John Henry Newman. It's the day in 1845 Newman was received into the one true fold of Christ, the Roman Catholic Church, by an Italian priest, Dominic Barberi, in Littlemore near Oxford. Newman's entry into the church came at exactly the halfway point of his long life, 45 years old. Later in life, he confided to Cardinal Manning that I have found very little but desert and desolation ever since I have been in the Catholic Church, that I have nothing pleasant to look back on, that all my human affections were with those whom I had left. One of the things we have to understand about St. John Henry Newman, he who we celebrate today, he who is the builder of this beautiful church, the founder of what is now UCD, University College Dublin, the one who has done so much for us, is that his time, both in his life before and after his conversion, but in his time after he became Catholic, he did not find, through much of his life, profound happiness. We know that he did what he did to pursue something deeper. His movement into Catholicism was something not initially motivated by disappointment or restlessness. As he wrote to his sister Jemima months before being received into the church, as time goes by and persons have the opportunity of knowing me better, they will be led to see that my motive simply is that I believe the Roman Church to be true. In leaving the Anglican communion, Newman gave up family. Many of his brothers and sisters stopped talking to him, gave up his friends. The honor and distinction of being an Oxford tutor and don, he gave up his pulpit, a position at a church in Oxford, and all that society holds dear. All his human affections were with those whom he left, and he did so to pursue his understanding of truth. In pursuing the truth, he sat uneasily in his new communion. Many Catholics, thrilled at the conversion of the bright intellectual light of Anglicanism becoming Catholic, but they did not necessarily want that light turned onto them or onto their beliefs and actions. Many would have preferred a more tamed Newman, a dumbed-down Newman, a parlor piece to be looked at and admired, standing mute in the corner. But Newman was never to remain silent, and his words were often used and twisted against him by non-Catholics and Catholics alike. Across his life, he wrote powerfully and meaningfully about truth and fidelity, and against a liberalism in religion and a secularism in English culture that seemed to be gutting any religious worldview in that society. He believed deeply in Christian dogma and that thoughtful men and women must submit to a revealed truth. He had fought this battle as an Anglican, which is why he championed the Anglo-Catholic tradition. and why he was one of the principal architects of the Oxford movement. As a Catholic, however, he cautioned again, in Roderick Strange's words, a harsh, narrow, aggressive, dogmatizing spirit intolerant of alternatives to its own worldview. Such an aggressive dogmatism elevated its own opinion into matters of faith. And this was small-minded, anti-intellectual, and dangerous, especially for the church in the modern world. As Wilfred Ward has noted, Newman knew that the writings of the early church fathers, whom he himself had studied carefully, were an absolute necessity in the situation that the church found itself. In the modern world, with an increasingly broadly and well-educated population, these writings were a necessary complement to the saintly lives of the early confessors, those who had given their lives as martyrs to the faith, in order to preserve the hold of the church on the educated classes, when Christianity was making its way not only to the simple and the illiterate, but to the learned and to the thoughtful. Rationalism could only be purged of its excesses by the wise exercise of reason. The articulation of the faith required a scalpel, not a hammer. In the modern setting, good men and women of faith, spiritual and prayerful thinkers were required to create, in a modern idiom, works similar to those of the early apologists, the church fathers who integrated faith and reason. Not just reason, but reason informed by prayer and molded by faith. Newman was a deep and prayerful man. And 3 years after his entry into the Catholic Church, in a meditation that he wrote down one morning as they prepared for Easter, a meditation that he made every morning, a meditation that he regularly wrote. Whenever he prayed, he said he prayed with a pen in his hand, and he would write down his thoughts and he would revisit them time and again. So this meditation dates to 1848, but probably was reworked by him 2 or 3 times over the next 20 years. He wrote, "God has created all things for good, all things for their greatest good, everything for its own good. What is the good of one is not the good of another. What makes one man happy would make another unhappy. God has determined, unless I interfere with his plan, that I should reach that which will be my greatest happiness. He looks on me individually. He calls me by my name. He knows what I can do, what I can best be, what is my greatest happiness, and he means to give it to me." But then he goes on, "God knows what my greatest happiness is, but I do not. There is no rule about what is happy and good. What suits one would not suit another. And the ways by which perfection is reached vary very much. The medicines necessary for our souls are very different from each other. Thus God leads us by strange ways. He knows he wills our happiness, but we neither know what our happiness is nor the way. We are blind. Left to ourselves, we should take the wrong way. We must leave it to him." Newman deeply believed in a God that was all-knowing and all-loving, and he believed in a communal approach to prayer and a communal teaching, but he understood that each person had to develop his or her own personal relationship with our loving God and enter into it fully. The next day, he went on to write, "God was all complete, all blessed in himself. But it was his will to create a world for his glory. He is almighty and might have done all things himself. But it has been his will to bring about his purposes by the beings he has created, by using us. We are all created to do his glory. We are created to do his will. I am created to do something, or to be something for which no one else is created. I have a place in God's counsels and God's world, which no one else has. Whether I be rich or poor, despised or esteemed by men, God knows me and calls me by my name. Each of us is to have a personal and intense relationship with our loving God. God has created me to do him some definite service. He has committed some work to me which he has not committed to another. I have my mission. I never may know it in this life, but I shall be told it in the next. Somehow I am necessary for God's purposes, as necessary in my place as an archangel in his. If indeed I fail, he can raise another, as he can make stones children of Abraham. Yet I have a part to play in this great work. I have a part to play in salvation. I am a link in a chain, a bond of connection between persons. He has not created me for naught. I shall do good. I shall do his work. I shall be an angel of peace, a preacher of truth in my own place, while not intending it, if I do but keep his commandments and serve him in my calling. Therefore I will trust him. Wherever I am, I can never be thrown away. If I am in sickness, my sickness may serve him. In perplexity, my perplexity may serve him. If I am in sorrow, my sorrow may serve him. My sickness or perplexity or sorrow may be necessary causes of some great end, which is quite beyond us. He does nothing in vain. He may prolong my life, he may shorten it. He knows what he is about. He may take away my friends, he may throw me among strangers, he may make me feel desolate, make my spirits sink, hide the future from me. Still, he knows what he is about. Newman had a deep and abiding sense that each and every one of us had a purpose in life, but that what that purpose may be isn't always clear to us, and that every element of our life is an opportunity to enter more deeply into this fundamental relationship each and every one of us is called to. And each and every one of those moments may help us transform the world in faith. But we don't always know the way. Long before his conversion, after Newman himself nearly died of illness in Italy, and as he was making his way back to England, back in 1833, when his ship was becalmed in the Mediterranean, he wrote a beautiful poem entitled The Pillar of the Cloud, more commonly known as Lead, Kindly Light, in which he embraces, early on in his life, the fullness of his knowledge and vision of God and of our role in God's activity, embracing both trust, some degree of doubt, but also that we will not see the way. He wrote, "Lead, kindly light, amid the encircling gloom, lead thou me on. The night is dark, and I am far from home. Lead thou me on, keep thou my feet. I do not ask to see the distant scene. One step enough for me. I was not ever thus, nor prayed that thou should leadest me on. I loved to choose and see my path, but now lead me on. I loved the garish day, and spite of fears, pride ruled my will. Remember not past years. So long thy power hath blessed me, sure it still would lead me on, o'er moor and fen, over crag and torrent, till the night is gone. And with the morn, those angel faces smile, which I have loved long since and lost a while." Newman believed that we have to put our trust in God, and we have to know that come what may, difficult times, hard times, rejection, or difficulty, that all is gift.